Hey everyone, I'm going to go over the strongest mons of every type and also PvP and Arena in Palworld. The devs have announced on their roadmap that PvP and Arena are in development. I'll go over the best pals for a team comp, how to get them as strong as possible, and also how I think the meta will be shaped and what I think will need to be changed to make PvP and Arena balanced. If you want to skip ahead to anything, feel free to use the chapters. First of all, I'll go through the elements and how to make a good team comp. So looking at the elements, you have 5 on the left and 4 on the right. Obviously, you have weaknesses and also super effectiveness. So looking at water and fire, water is super effective against fire, and fire is less effective against water because it's resisted. With all the ones on the left, it's nice and easy. Fire beats grass, grass beats ground, electric beats water. Looking at the right, it's a linear path. So you've got ice, dragon, dark, neutral. Ice beats dragon, dragon beats dark, dark beats neutral. There's 2 that stand out here. Obviously neutral, because it's not super effective against anything, and fire, because that is super effective against 2 different ones. So ice and grass, which no other types are super effective against 2. So on a good team, you obviously want a fire type because it's going to beat 2 different typings, and also a water type because a lot of other people are going to be running fire as well. Ideally, you want to have one of every type in there apart from neutral because it's not super effective against anything, and potentially dark as well because not many people are going to be running neutral, so you won't have to have dark to counter that. Though at the moment, if there's no balancing or nerfs to a couple of the pals, which I'll explain soon, it's going to be completely different. And you will be basically just running fire, ice, dragon, dark, and neutral. Another important thing to keep in mind about these elements is stab. So that same type attack bonus. So if you have a water type pal and it uses a water type move, that's going to have stab, which will do 20% increased damage. So running a water grass type, it's going to have stab on water and grass. So you're going to want to run water type attacks and grass type attacks on that mon because it's going to be a lot stronger. The other thing to consider as well is if you have a water type mon and you're using it with water attacks, obviously people are going to use electric types to counter your water type. You can run ground attacks on that water type to be able to do a lot of damage to that electric type, though you will not get that stab bonus. At the moment, if I look at my PAL deck, I have caught 135 out of 135. I've gone through and had a look at all of them. I'll go through every single one, what's the best for each type, and also what the meta will most likely be. First of all, if there are no nerfs or any balancing when PvP comes out, this is the most meta team you can possibly get. So looking at these top 4, these are all legendary pals. They all have static spawns in the world, and they all have the passive legend, which increases their attack defense by 20% and their movement speed by 15%, which is absolutely insane. All of these mons have very, very high attack and defense and quite high health. If you look at them compared to a level 50 boss that I've caught, this has 700 attack and almost 600 defense, nearly 900 attack, 700 defense, 750 attack, nearly 900 defense, 900 attack, nearly 700 defense, 900 attack, 600 defense. Their stats are just incredibly good. And looking at their health, this is a level 50 boss, 3.6 thousand, 8.5, 8.5, nearly 14,000, 10.7 thousand. They are insanely strong at the moment. They are the best mons by far, and if they are not nerfed or anything's not balanced, every single team is going to have these 4 on them, and then a Firemon alongside it. The reason for the Firemon is purely because of elements. You have a legendary neutral, dark, dragon, and ice. To counter the ice, you will put a fire on the team. There's a possibility that you want to put a water on the team just so you can counter other people's fire, but their ice type is going to be substantially stronger than their fire type, and it's not even worth doing that. You want to have a counter to that ice. If there's balancing and the legendaries aren't as strong in PvP, you're going to find a really strong team is going to look like this. So you've got a fire type, you have an ice type, you have a ground type, a grass type, an electric type, and a water type. We also have dragon on 2 of them. So looking at the elements, you have got all 5 of these covered, you have ice covered, and you have dragon covered. If people aren't going to be running neutral very often, you're not going to need a dark, but if they are, you can put a dark type in there as well. The majority of these elements are covered with stab attacks, so you'll be able to swap out your mons for something that counters the other person's. So next I'll go over how to make your PALs as strong as possible. So looking at blaze them up, there's 2 different ways of catching them. Up here you can find the stand version, and here is a static boss spawn. So there's benefits to both of them. Obviously it's going to be much quicker and easier to catch up here, though as a boss they have a higher chance of getting better passives and more passives. So it's good to farm this every hour to try and get really good passives, and then it's good to farm up here if you need as many as possible to combine them. Once you have a few blazer mutts, what you want to do is take the best ones with the best passives. So this one has Flame Emperor and Vanguard. As a boss, this one always gets Flame Emperor, and Vanguard's pretty good as well. You take a male and a female. At the moment I've got these 2, and you put them into a breeding pen. You put cake in here, and they will create eggs of blazer moths. You take the eggs, you take it to an incubator, and you incubate the egg. The reason you put ones with good passives in there is because it increases the chance of the eggs that are incubated to have better passives. So this one's got 3, it's not the best, but it has a higher chance of getting the ones that they have. You keep breeding them over and over until you get one with the passives that you want. Then you take that one over to your condenser, you put in your strongest one, and then you start combining them with all your other ones. So for the first level it only needs 5 total, but then it goes up to 16, 32, and then the last star is 64. So you do need quite a bit, but every time you condense them it increases the base stats. But make sure you have really good passive skills on your initial one, because you cannot undo this, and also you want to make it as strong as possible. You're going to have to catch a lot of them to get to that final star, so make sure you don't rush this process. Once you have all the passives that you want on your mon, and you've combined it with 117 others to get it to 5 star, you can go to your shrine. You can then level up attack, defense, and health. First level is going to take 1 small soul, then 2, 3, then 4, then medium 1, 2, 3, then 4, and then large 1, 2, 3, then 4. If you do change your mind and want to put these souls on a different mon, you can reset it. It does cost a lot, but you get all of those souls back. Also, some people say that having a boss mon like this one is better than having a regular one because it has better stats. That's not true. It just has a role to get better stats. It does not mean that it's gonna always be stronger. Next I will go over the different types and which ones are the strongest and which are the strongest dual types. First I'll start with fire. So usually down the bottom of the PAL deck is the strongest of each type. So you have Valeris, you have Suzaku, and Blazema are all very strong mono fire types. Suzaku can be found as a boss type just here, which makes it better to farm passives, and Blazema down here. So they are much easier to create a stronger mon of. Fire only has 3 different dual types. The first one being Dragon and Fire. This is the only Dragon and Fire. This is Jormatide Ignis. You cannot find it as a boss type, so it's harder to get the passives, but it's quite a strong type. Having it being Dragon and Fire is a very strong combination because it does not have the weakness to ice that Dragon does because of the fire. Next is Fire and Dark. There's a few different Fire and Dark types, but Blaze Hell is the strongest stat-wise. Blaze Hell Nox does not have a boss spawn though, but it is very easy to find out in the wild. And lastly, you have Fire and Ground. Reptyro is the only Fire and Ground type, which is quite strong as well, though it doesn't have a boss spawn. Next is Grass. So for Mono Grass, Lillian is quite strong. Wumpo Botan is very strong as well, and has a boss spawn just up here. But in my opinion, the strongest Mono Grass type is Mossandra. Purely because of the passive, you can use it as a mount and you can fire rocket launchers off it. Rocket launchers will be very strong in PvP, as you can use them to CC. They knock down mobs for quite a while when you hit them. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it is really good crowd control. You don't have a lot of ammo, but you can keep this up for quite a while if you do slowly attack. For dual typing, there's 3 different dual types for Grass. First of all, you have Broncherry Aqua, which is the only grass water type, which makes it quite unique. It doesn't have a boss spawn, and it doesn't have the best stats, but its grass water typing could be very useful in a team, especially against fire types, as fire types are super effective against grass, but the water counters that. Then you have Dinosom, which is Grass Dragon. It's the only Grass Dragon type, which is quite good, though it doesn't have a boss spawn, so it's harder to farm those passives, but this typing could be quite useful. Its stats aren't absolutely great, but if you need this typing, it's available. And lastly, you have Grass Ground. There's a few different Grass Ground types, though Warsect is the best by far. It's got pretty decent stats, and it's always a boss spawn just up here, which makes it easier to farm passives for. It has very high defense and pretty decent attack as well. I personally think it is the strongest grass type if you're not using the rocket launcher. Next we have Ground. So for Mono Ground, Anubis is the strongest by far. It has the best stats. It also has a boss spawn location just up here. And compared to the other Mono Ground types, it's just the best by far. Next you have Grass and Ground, which Warsect is the best. It's got a boss spawn, easy to farm passives, and it's got very nice stats. You have one Ground Dark type, which is Metasting. It has a boss spawn just up here, so it makes it very easy to farm passives for, and it has very good stats overall. The last 2 types are the Reptyro family. So you have Fire Ground. Reptyro doesn't have a boss spawn, but it's very easy to find. And Ice Reptyro, which is very hard to find. You need to hatch it from an egg or find it inside of a dungeon. Both of these are pretty decent. They both have pretty good stats, though it's quite a bit of a pain not having them as a boss. Next is Water. Suzuku Aqua is basically the best. There's not many other mono water types that are that decent. This one is the best. It does not have a boss spawn, and it is very hard to find. You cannot find it in the wild. You have to hatch from an egg or find it inside of a cave. Next is Dragon Water. There are 3 different Dragon Waters. 2 of them are pretty decent. Jormatide is probably the strongest water type in the game, and it has incredible stats. It has 2 different boss spawn locations. One is just there, and then one is in this lake, so it makes it very easy to farm stats. And having Water Dragon typing is very good, because it's not weak to ice as a dragon type. The other Dragon Water type that's decent is Relaxarus. Purely because of its passive, you can use it as a mount and use the grenade launchers off its back for PvP, which is great, though stat-wise, you're going to find that Jormatide is better, and Relaxarus does not have a static boss spawn. You also have Broncherry Aqua. Like I said, it's not very good. The typing's not very good and its stats aren't very good. The other water typing that you can get is water ice. So Penking is a boss, it's very easy to farm his stats, though there is one downside to water ice. You do not want to be using this as a main water type. You want to have another water type on your team because fire types are going to be very common since they're super effective against two different types. Using this as a water type against fire is quite bad because it's also ice, so it's not going to have a resistance to fire type like any other water type because it's super effective against ice. Though using it as an ice type is very good because fire is not going to do as much damage to it. Next we have ice types. So the best ice type by far is Frostalion. This is a legendary, it gets 20% attack, defense, and 15% movement speed. It's nice and easy to farm, it's got a static boss spawn, its stats are absolutely insane, just the best ice type by far. And it's going to be very meta unless it's nerfed. There are 4 other dual types for ice. First you have water and ice. It's not the best typing. Using it as an ice type is pretty good because it's got a fire resistance, otherwise using it as a water is very bad. He's got a boss spawn, so you can farm his stats nice and easy for him, which is one of the first ones in the game, just up here. Next is Chillet, who is an ice dragon. It's the only ice dragon type. This is actually really good to use as a dragon type, purely because ice is super effective against dragon, but having that ice typing as well makes it do less damage. Though Chillet doesn't have the best stats, it is a boss and it is easy to farm its passives. The typing does make up quite a bit for its bad stats. Next is Ice and Ground. Ice Reptyro is a decent mon, though it doesn't have a boss spawn. It's quite hard to get. You're going to have to get it from caves or eggs, but it is decent typing and it does have decent stats. And lastly is Ice and Dark. So Van Worm Crest is Ice and Dark. It's very hard to get though. You have to get it from eggs or caves. And it doesn't have the best stats, so you probably won't see this one too often. One big downside about this type is that using ice, you want to use it against dragons, though being a dark type, dragon is super effective against it. Next is the dragon type. So the best dragon is Jetragon. This is the strongest PAL in the game right now. It's a legendary, its stats are absolutely insane. If it's not nerfed, it's going to be meta on every single team. It's nice and easy to farm because it has a boss spawn just up here. It is very difficult to catch though. I've caught it on normal, though you can change your settings to make it very, very easy to catch. For dual typing, Dragon has the most dual types in the game. It's got 5. The best electric type is Osurk. It's got the best stats. It's relatively easy to find up there, though it doesn't have any boss spawns, so it's quite harder to get the passives that you want for it. Another good option as a dragon electric type is Relaxarus Lux, because it does have that mounted missile launcher on its back. This also has a boss spawn, so it's very easy to farm the passives. For dragon water, you can have basic Relaxarus. It doesn't have a boss spawn, so it's kind of harder to find the passives, though they're quite easy to find, and it's got the missile launcher on its back. The other option is going with Jormatide, which is a lot stronger, but usually you would want to use this as your water type, as it is the strongest water type in the game right now. Jormatide does have 2 spawns for it. It's got one just up here, and then it's also got one in the lake. You can also go with Jormatide Ignis, which is Fire Dragon. This is quite good because Dragon is weak to ice, but fire counters that. Jormatide Ignis is quite hard to obtain though, only through eggs and also in caves. Though Jormatide Ignis does have quite good stats. Then we have Dragon Grass, which Dinosom is the only one. There is no boss spawn and it doesn't have the best stats. But if you do need a dragon grass typing for whatever, you can use it. And lastly, there is Dragon Dark. So the best Dragon Dark type, and the only one at the moment, is Asteragon. This one is very, very strong, has insane stats. It has a boss spawn for it just here. So you can farm its stats very easily. And it's just very strong overall. Next we have dark types. So the best dark type by far is Necromus. It's a legendary. It's found right up the top, up here alongside Palladus. It is quite hard to capture because these two legendaries will be with each other. Though I was able to catch it on a normal playthrough, you can change your settings to make it very easy to catch. And since it's a legendary, it has insane stats, it has legendary passives, and it is going to be a meta on everyone's team unless it's nerfed. Dark has 4 dual typings. One of them is Dark Dragon, which is a Steragon, very strong. It's found just over here as a boss. Insane stats. You have Dark Fire. Blaze Hell Noct is the best. There are 3 others, but this one has the best stats. It's relatively easy to find at night time all around here, though it does not have a boss spawn location, so it's harder to farm the passives for. There is a Dark Ground option that is Meta Sting, very strong mon, has high stats, has a spawn just up here, so you can farm the passives for it. And overall it's very good. And lastly you have Dark Ice. Vanworm Crest isn't the best, its typing is quite bad. If you're going to use it as an ice type, it's going to want to fight dragons, though dragon's going to be super effective against it because it's a dark type. It doesn't have the best stats and it doesn't have a boss spawn. Next is Electric. So for Mono Electric, Grisbolt has the best stats, it's the strongest. It does not have a boss spawn, though it has the best stats overall if you did want to go with Mono Electric. Another option for Mono Electric is Mossandra Lux. It has pretty decent stats, but more importantly it has that rocket launcher so you can CC on the back of it. And it does have a boss spawn, so you're able to farm it just over here for its passives. Electric does have the least amount of mons in the game. It only has 1 dual type, which is Dragon. Ozurk is the strongest, does not have a boss spawn location, but it has the best stats. And Relaxarus Lux is another really good option, purely because it has the mounted missile launcher. It also has a boss spawn, which is just over here, which you can farm for those passives. Lastly is normal type. Palladus is the strongest normal type by far. It's a boss. It's a legendary type, so it has legendary passives, insane stats, and that can be found just up here. Other than that, there's not really many good normal types. Probably the second best would be either Fingerlope or Kingpacker, but honestly I probably wouldn't run either of them. But that's that for that video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I'll be doing a lot more videos on PvP content in Palworld. I'll be doing a few other guides while I wait for PvP and Arena. I hope this has helped some of you out, and I hope you had a good day. Alright, thank you everyone.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over my channel. And then I start eating garbage.